Hey, well, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all here and many friends in the crowd. This is the short-term rental discussion, and it's a one-hour meeting. I'm Mayor Jerry Gimwiller from the town of Paradise Valley. Just a reminder that handouts on all sessions will be located on the League's website and on the conference mobile app, and that biographical information on all conference speakers, we have two excellent speakers today, are included on the conference app. And to please, reminder to please silence your cell phones. So today we're here obviously to talk about short-term rentals. And this is an issue that's of concern in my community and many other communities. As a matter of fact, as many are aware, 33 mayors, some of whom are in the room today, wrote to the industry, Airbnb and VRBO, their CEOs, to identify some of the problems that we have in Arizona because of a unique state law that preempts and took away the local control that we used to enjoy. And Nick Ponder from the League and Roxana have been excellent. The League as a whole has been excellent, as have cities and towns. I'm trying to work on this issue to restore balance. This is the short-term rental industry, and the issue obviously involves technology, tourism, property ownership, and property rights. But from my perspective and from the perspective of many of our mayors and councils and elected officials, and most importantly, citizens, many of whom are interested in this issue, it's about neighbors and neighborhoods and public safety. Those are the key issues: property ownership, home ownership, quiet home ownership, safe home ownership, being a fundamental cornerstone of our society and of the American dream. So this session is really special, and I want to thank our town manager, Joe Kymack. I was speaking here last time this morning about the council manager form of government and having a robust discussion on that and what works and what doesn't work. Well, the real secret is having an amazing town manager who can put everything together. And Jill did a fabulous job helping to bring in these excellent speakers. And what we're going to be doing today is a little bit unconventional, but I think it'll be really helpful. Because the discussion that we've been having in Arizona, and we have one of our legislative champions here, Representative Kavanaugh, who's been an excellent champion for cities and towns. I want to thank him for that. Well, the discussion we've been having is largely focused on what we can't do with our current state law that has taken away the abilities of cities and towns to have a voice on these issues. So we thought collectively, wouldn't it be interesting to have a discussion about what we could do? And what's the rubric for that? Well, in Arizona, we're innovators, we're hard workers, we're smart, but we're also smart enough to not reinvent the wheel if there's a good example to be followed. And so these two distinguished panelists, I think, will really help show us what's worked in other communities, and in this case in Colorado and in California. So our neighbors that have the similar kinds of issues that we have in Arizona, how they've been able to navigate balancing all the rights of all the people and coming up with the best solutions. So that's really the context of this discussion. It's going to be a wonderful discussion, and it's my privilege right now to introduce Nick Ponder from the League, who will fill us in on the work that's happened and where we are as far as our current legislation.
Thank you. So for those of you that don't know, Nick Ponder, Legislative Director for the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. I will first point out that he said we have two excellent speakers. So apparently we have one mediocre speaker here, but no, nevertheless.
And a really bad one.
So I'm just gonna give a very brief sort of 5-minute background on the history of this legislation and sort of where we are today, and then turn it over to the three panelists here, the two panelists and Mayor Gimwiller to discuss. But prior to 2016, there was a pure sort of local control to the area of short-term rentals in the state of Arizona. In 2016, legislation was passed. It was Senate Bill 1350. And frankly, it passed overwhelmingly. Mr. Kavanaugh could certainly stand up and talk about he was one of the lone no votes on that bill and testified at the time to how bad he thought it might be. And he was right, at least from our perspective and from the perspective of many neighbors. I don't want to say that we're here trying to prohibit short-term rentals. That's not the case at all. In fact, our legislation all along has actually said that we cannot prohibit short-term rentals. And we don't have the intention of doing so, but there is a responsibility of the local government to balance those disparate property rights interests of adjacent property owners. And so that's really what we're trying to focus on when it comes to any type of legislation. So in 2016, Senate Bill 1350 was passed. All the testimony at the time was about allowing the widow to rent out a room in her house to make ends meet, or to allow an individual to rent out their casita. What is different about these than maybe the properties that we typically have challenges with is that they are owner occupied. And so just like a hotel where there's somebody that is able to help sort of control the noise and whatever challenges you might have, that was the sale at the time. Obviously, as we know, that is very different today, where we have a lot of corporate interests coming and investing in buying up properties, hedge funds, buying up billions of dollars in properties in Arizona and presenting a challenge for our residents. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges that I saw in 1350 is subsection B2 talks about how we can regulate short-term rentals for zoning. However, it ties them to what are called class 3 and class 4 properties. So in effect, short-term rentals are tied to long-term rentals as it relates to any regulation that the city does. We see that as transient versus resident, and we certainly treat transients differently than we do residents in any of our other policies at the local level. So it really does present challenges. So that's why I think this panel will be very interesting in identifying maybe what we could do, as Mayor Bien-Wollner said, within the framework of the statutes that currently exist. Now, we have been at the league for the last 5 years with the help of Mr. Kavanaugh and former Senator Kate Brophy-McGee, trying to address issues related to short-term rentals. Not only the party house issue that I think is sort of that low-hanging fruit, but not the only issue. There's an issue with proliferation. I'll just take the opportunity to speak for Sedona right now and say that their population between 2010 and 2020 decreased by 3.5%, despite having more physical units in their city. Why did it decrease? Because a big portion of their municipality has short-term rentals. What does that do to them on a holistic scale? Well, they have a lower population. They now get less revenue in state shared revenue that they can use to fund the important services that they provide. So this sort of issue starts at a core, but branches out to a web of many other issues that sort of manifest themselves in local government. So for the past 5 years, we have been trying at the league level to provide more local control to our governments without saying somebody cannot rent out their home as a short-term rental, or they cannot utilize that asset as a resource for themselves. And so we have, unfortunately, by and large, been unsuccessful. There is a contingent at the legislature that believes that property rights are limitless, despite the fact that somebody chose to live in a city or town. And so that is part of the biggest challenge I think that we face at the local level. So we'll continue to pursue the issue, but I also want to hear about creative opportunities to address the issue today. And I know that all you here want to hear that, but we'll continue to pursue it from the league. But I think this session will help put some perspective in what we could do in today's climate.
Thank you, Nick. A great overview of the challenges. And as a disclaimer, as Nick noted, Justin has specific experience of being in Arizona, which we'll talk about. But much of what you'll hear about will be a source of dialogue and questions. From what I've heard and seen, could not be done in Arizona with our current legal framework, and that's part of this important discussion, is what we're missing out on. And the property rights issue is certainly a key point. And I know Nick and the league have done, I think he sold himself and the league a little short. There's been great traction on preventing the industry from furthering their objectives by passing legislation, Representative Kavanaugh and others, and many of my colleagues here that have worked on this, to stop them from doubling down on what we already have and saying this issue's dead and resolved forever. That's not where we're at. We're going to talk about what those measures could be. And the property rights issue, you're right, is a key issue. And that's something we balance as local officials all the time, balancing people's property rights. You know, I own a car. I don't get to drive it however fast I want to, anywhere I want to in a city or town, just because it's my car and I own it. So that's some of what we'll hear about. And with that, I will yield to our distinguished panelists.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Cook. manager of Palm Springs, California, and I'm very recently honored to serve in the same capacity in Sedona. For about 6 years, so I was here with 13 people. I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective having served in 2 communities, one with virtually over 2 blocks and one with a pretty full block. Also, if you see some current Sedona City Council members, I'll have some fun here for a second while I say, I also own a home with Sedona. So I also have perspective there. While I live in Sedona, I was a neighbor of one. It's not good, it's not bad. And I also see the benefit of sharing economy and supports me and my family, our desire to keep roots in the place that we do. So I'll talk a little bit about what makes a lot of this different, the 2 communities. But first, just a little bit about Palm Springs started to regulate short-term rental activity in 2000. That was fairly early on. I think one of the earlier adopters of regulations in this space. And then there were major upgrades to that regulatory framework in 2014 and 17. In 2018, there was a ballot initiative to ban short-term rentals and lost by 7%. The feeling is largely supported, but I think that's also largely because the city council is very responsive to concerns of citizens and aim to create regulations that maintain a thriving tourist economy but preserve high quality of life. There's about 2,200 units currently in Palm Springs. That's an all-time high, so we continue to see growth in that market, and that represents about 6% of the population. So a significant impact, not unlike what you see in other tourist communities. Generates approximately $15 million in TOT, so the tax. And that's pretty significant during the pandemic. That was one of the few sources that maintained some of the financial position in the city that was otherwise hit very hard by the pandemic. So we get the economic piece, we get the resident quality of life piece, and we get the property rights piece. Some of the key regulations, and I think there are short practices out there. I think it's probably more interesting just discussing what they are, is why they work, why they have a certain impact, but just to cover from a pretty high level. First of all, while there isn't a resident requirement, the owner doesn't have to be on site, and you don't have to live in Palm Springs to own and operate a short-term rental, you are only allowed 1 permit. So that's really, I think, meant to preserve what we describe as sharing economy, rather than a corporate enterprise. Properties are also limited to 36 rental contracts per year. So you can do quick math on that. You've got hard to be turnover. Most owners aren't going to accept a 2-day rentals because it doesn't have enough value. I should say that I think one of the themes of these regulations is trying to make the activity short-term rentals mirror the zone use, residential, right? So if you think about it, one of the things that makes short-term rental activity so different is how often it's turned over. So something like limiting 30 to 36 contracts per year is meant to make it look and walk the top of the field a little more like it. There's also occupancy limits that are similarly aimed at preserving what would be kind of residential quality. So 2 persons per bedroom or at each household, plus some retention for guest signing needs to be someone 25 years or older. I think we were all accustomed to that when we were able to rent a car. So interesting that borrowers of this framework seems to work very well to be a higher among whoever is responsible for the contract. Some more aggressive policies are things like prohibition on amplified noise for music outdoors. Right? So this is something that doesn't apply all Springs, but recognize that people are on vacation. And then one of the complaints among their neighbors, the city decided, you know what, you can come here and enjoy the indoor. But we can't have music outside. If we let do that, the neighbors are going to hear it all the time instead of occasionally like trash service has been somewhat of a small issue for some, bigger issue for others. The city just made that nice and clean, said you shall have walk-up service. We're not going to let you, bring the trash can in the corner and sit there for 3 or 4 days ahead, pick up and 3 or 4 days after. Registration is required and must be advertised, of course, and then even unpaid stays out. Right? So somebody, and this is, I know from some experience, sometimes they need assistance. Say, oh no, we're not paying. Yes, that's my thing. So in this case, it doesn't matter if you're saying that the free or you're paying, if you're paying your friends, they all count as one of those 36 contracted states. So how is all of this enforced? The team, first of all, I should say that revenues from permits cover the cost of enforcement from jurisdiction. Right now, that seems to be about 7 FTE from the program, the bottom of the slide there. They do a couple of things, including campus permits, but a big part of their jobs is vacation rentals. The staff is split between administrative and some dedicated code enforcement that specialize in short-term rental issues. 24-hour hotline for complaints, a failure to register with the appeal as of 2018, $5,000 fine, and you can, and some have been there. So very little tolerance there. The code rules, register your property, you don't, people need vacation rental very hard. For unenrolled violations, first one, $500, second one is $1,000, and if you have 3 over 12-month period, suspend for 2 years. That doesn't happen often, but I have signed a handful of those suspensions during my 6-month tenure. What's nice about this is, while it is strict, it creates not only good behavior, but I'll be honest, for bad actors then get suspended, they return along the middle, so they sell their property, and they create the market opportunity for the good actors when they don't. Right? So we step this strategy by supplying land, having a level playing field of rules means that folks that aren't very good at it end up leaving the industry. And what we're left are largely good actors who do a good job at it. We give about $1,000 annually and then issue about 250 citations. So this is just a quick breakdown of where the citations come from, so you can kind of see how some of the rules result in enforcement activity. I won't be all through that, but music, people that aren't registered, failure to respond if there's an issue, and then some of these other smaller citations. This is what I really want to leave the room with. It was fascinating for me preparing for this presentation to look at the terms of data and ask the question: so what did all these radical regulations mean for the industry? What do they mean for quality of life? Did they work, and did they create negative unintended consequences? So you see here that in 2018, there were about 1,900 total permits and 425 notifications. By 2021, total permits grew by about 11.5%, and total citations fell by 40%. And what you actually see when you look at the data more closely is the growth rate accelerated after 2018, despite these strict regulations. And the citations really plummeted and plummeted quickly. So in other words, good regulations, thoughtful and tailored to the local community, preserves the strength of an industry, preserves the private property rights to support that industry, and improves quality of life at the same time. I really think you're going to have the best of both worlds. It is thoughtful. What makes it work in Palm Springs is different than the very neighborhood community, right? It was locally tailored, it was locally made, it was vetted locally, voters got the rating on it, and what we have. So with that, just want to point out that for those that have follow-up questions, I'm happy to help. Our team's happy to help with that great. And there's some contact information with the slide that so if you
Erica Rogers. I am currently an assistant city attorney in Denver City Attorney's Office. For the last 3 years, I served as a policy analyst in the city's Department of Excise and Licenses, which issues all of our permits. So I got to be a person who got to work on some of our changes to the ordinance after it was initially adopted. So I'll run through a little bit of that history, but it's really exciting topic. Excited to be here talking to you all about it. So we were a little bit later to the game, which is 2008 is pretty early. We had our first discussions in Denver in 2015, 2016. There was a lot of public input at neighborhood organization meetings, at city council committees, culminating in an ordinance in 2016 to regulate short-term rentals. The discussion at that point was, should we ban them or should we regulate them? And overwhelmingly, the feedback was, we want to allow them, but we want to safeguard against certain challenges, certain risks, right? So City Council adopted that ordinance in 2016, multifamily license beginning January 1st, 2017. So we're almost through our 5th year of licensing in Denver. In 2020, last year, really fun, we have 2 big updates to our short-term rental ordinance. The first was a tweak to our primary residence requirement, which I'll talk about here shortly. And the second was a series of provisions that implement some platform accountability. So, mobility service providers like Airbnb, VRBO, and a numerous amount of others that had no responsibility under our ordinance, we provided some responsibility there. So opportunities versus risks. This was kind of the menu of options that the talking points that were had on both sides, right? There's so much opportunity when Denver decided to adopt an ordinance in what the possibilities were. The mayor mentioned in 2016 with Arizona bill, there was a cell, the widow who wants to rent out her group. That was also a big selling thing. Looking at ways, especially with a high cost of living, that people on fixed income, students, retirees, citizens who own their home in Denver or live in a home in Denver need a little bit of extra money, either in retirement or for school or something like that. It wasn't pursued as a commercial industry, it was pursued as a local operating, which people make a little bit of extra money. However, there was also a lot of talk about risks, right? The use of properties for short-term rentals in a place like Denver had a huge impact on conversation about housing stock and housing affordability. I've actually looked at studies that we wrote to the materials for the session. In 2019, our Department of Economic Development did a study finding that our short-term rental market in Denver actually had not had a negative impact on affordability, but that was due to our primary residence requirement. That was the thing that was preventing the short-term rentals from having a negative impact that people were nervous about when the law was first passed. So here's some basics about our ordinance. All short-term rentals must be licensed. Any short-term rental has to be that host's primary residence. So you can only have one primary residence. You can have several residences, vacation home, second vacation home, whatever, you don't mind, but your primary residence is the only one that can be used as short-term. Your home, again, in line with the sharing economy, not the idea of purchasing a lot of homes for investment in the short-term rental space. Just like Palm Springs, all of the advertisements for your short-term rental has to display your business license number so that people know that you have a business license. And all short-term rental hosts have to abide by rules for safety, taxes, zoning, and insurance requirements. Failure to follow those rules can result in penalties, including license revocation. Like Palm Springs, we have a step system. So you'll get a notice of violation, you'll get a fine, second fine, and a third fine, and should cost to have your license revoked. We've revoked, I would say, about 30 licenses in 5 years, and most of those were about years 3, 4, because after everyone got to the regulatory full licenses, you go online, apply, pay your $25 to get a license, right? Sign a attestation saying you were there. But we were finding that some people were obviously not renting their primary residence, and so we had to take some enforcement action. So the primary residence is huge in Denver. It's not something that is great fit for every city, but talking about how different cities have different needs and different things that they're trying to encourage, different things they're trying to protect, right? We really want to take advantage of those opportunities of short-term rentals. Providing those opportunities for people to make that extra money while avoiding all of those risks, right? One of the biggest risks being encouragement of commercial activity into our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods in Denver we're very proud of. They have great, strong community ties, histories, different personalities, and neighbors who live there and have lived there for generations are very proud of those neighborhoods. What they didn't want is what you see in New Orleans and some other towns where those neighborhoods have disappeared because the properties have been bought up by investors to short-term rent to travelers, and there's no permanent residence. That's something we heard from citizens that they did not want to have. So requiring the primary residence helps a lot of people, especially those neighbors who will make those neighborhoods their home and make our city what it is. The numbers from Denver to share with you also. So these 3 lines to show a couple of different things. The red line is the number of new properties that we have found, being rented as short-term rentals. At the beginning, we had a lot more out there. As over time, it gets reduced. However, the number of active licenses has only slightly reduced, right? And so what that means is that our compliance rate is going up over time. And over the last 5 years, we've seen more and more people who are running a short-term rental get licensed, and fewer and fewer people who cannot get licensed or not licensed be able to run that short-term rental. The key piece that is active to Denver in our short-term rental space and generally in government is our short-term rental advisory committee STR. This is a group made up of a bunch of different people with totally different interests who somehow get together every 2 months and have great conversations. So when the bill was passed to enable regulation of short-term rentals, City Council wanted to have an advisory committee standing. We talked about, how's licensing going, how's enforcement going, how's compliance going. We talked about policy recommendations that the group can make to the city. So this group is comprised of hosts, people who are super hosts on Airbnb. They rent out our platforms, also guests, short-term rental property managers, people who help facilitate those bookings for, maybe that retiring is great technology, who hire someone to help their cleaning schedule and things like that. We've also got neighbors who represent those registered organizations who are very proud of their neighborhoods and want to keep that fabric, as well as city council representation. And we've got some professional organizations there as well. So we've got Visit Denver, which is a tourism organization that partners with the city. We've got the Metro Association of Realtors, who have their pulse on property in the area. We've got the platforms at the table. We have a representative from Airbnb on our committee, and we also have spoken with folks, which we have others. We have a representative from the Hotel and Lodging Association. At the beginning, the hotels were nervous about the impact of short-term rentals would have. So they wanted to be able to hear what was going on, discuss and weigh in. Short-term rentals would be treated similarly to hotels and not, receive a bunch of benefits that would just. And then finally, we have these meetings are open to the public. We've been doing this for the last almost 2 years now with the pandemic, but they are open to public comment sessions at the end. And these public comment periods are actually have been super productive. We've got some great recommendations from short-term rental hosts or members of the community who have brought a problem to us and suggested a solution. An example of that I thought was really great. We had a property owner say, hey, I tried to really talk to my neighbors about what's going on with short-term rental. They've been telling me that it's been allowed. I've gotten complaints about my property, which actually really have. Can you tell me? I think a complaint so that I can fix it, rather than maybe not hearing it from my neighbors. And so we implemented the system where if somebody has a property complaint, that host is notified, right? So that they can take those steps and remedy it. So I thought that was a great suggestion from responsible folks wanting to do a good job, wanting to do their part to make sure that slide I won't go into too much detail, but this is the kind of discussion that STR has, right? We talk about what are their values and what are their goals and what are the specific tactics that the city can take or programs that they can implement that will make short-term rentals as successful as possible. I think one of our best results from this STR is that we've gotten great suggestions. We've gotten a lot of buy-in from hosts. We've kind of reluctantly dragged some of the platforms along. To a result that really works best for our town needs and our citizens. And this is just available so that you have all of our information about our ordinance, our rules, tax information, zoning information for your counties. I'm very able to read all this stuff in other cities, so this will be available in our materials.
Thank you. Allows us to dream big by maybe stealing portions of other people's dreams. So just a few questions and definitely a chance for the audience to ask questions as well. This is fascinating to us as we've talked about within the town. the problems that we have. And I know some of my friends, Cogsman Dickey, Mayor Peterson, who were early in helping to support responsible local input on these issues like we used to be able to do before we got our preemptive legislation in Arizona. Can you, each of you, comment briefly on what the driver was, what happened around those timeframes that caused your communities to implement your own local rules and regulations?
So I was not in the public at the time, a lot of this happened, but I've spoken to the team and some officials, and really, it was government working the way government is supposed to work. So residents had demands, and they had expectations, and they wanted their to be responsible. And so they engaged, and there were our concerns. There was already some movement to introduce ballot measures, paying out. And so the council listened and said, how about if you're looking for better balance than that? All nothing. We introduced some very reasonable regulations that are similar, engaged with industry representatives, engaged with owners, engaged with neighbors, and said, what would work? Outline the problems, crafted legislation to fix those problems without going too far, on balance. And it's exactly what we want. That was a fine-tuned instrument because it was done at that scale at that point.
I would say the same. The community had concerns, obviously, about the negative aspects, right? The noise, the trash, parking, guests coming in and out. They didn't know, and what we were doing fast. Concerns to council. It was, the question that council members asked were, should we begin or should we regulate, right? It was that specific choice, and based on a lot of feedback and open sessions, they decided that some key regulations, estimations and things that we don't have. There's no restrictions on occupancy, there's no restrictions on the number of times per year, there's no minimum age, and there's no noise requirements in that sense, right? But we do not have that primary residence legs are part of that. So, with that, people felt comfortable moving forward, and we decided to work.
Thank you. And just to clarify so that everyone understands, so I understand, the primary residence requirement is essentially home sharing one's own home.
Yes.
And I gleaned from what you said earlier that doesn't mean that the homeowner has to be there 24/7 while someone's staying at their home. So they may be away buying groceries, picking up kids from school, but it has to be the home that person lives in, which then may be avoided to do some of the other measures.
Exactly. What we find is that most of our complaints, noise, trash, parking, other disturbances, come from folks who are not primary. We found that having the person who lives at home most of the time, like that's the main person return. They may international work, they may serve in armed forces, they may have to go work in another location 2 months a year. But while they're not there, or just seeing on the weekend, which is a whole interview, they can write out their own research. So they can be there if they want to, they're not room, or they're not really hospital, they're not there. As long as it's okay.
Thank you. And Eric, if I can keep you on the hot seat for a moment. You mentioned, I think, some innovative ideas about how, on a going forward basis, Denver decided to involve the community and get advice to the council so that your community could continue to fine tune what it's doing to promote a healthy relationship. But at the outset, in the initial stages, how would you describe the stakeholder involvement, including by the hosts and the platforms and the neighbors? What was that process like, and how did that work?
Sure. It was rocky at times, right? It's kind of a roller coaster sometimes. That's what they gathering of people with views, but I think something that was very important to us in Denver was to protect our compliant hosts, right? These were people who follow the laws, they got their license, they followed all the rules, they, took care to be responsible owners and good leaders in their communities. And so it's really important for us to empower them and make them feel protected. Be able to use their property in a way that this is helpful to the whole community, but also make sure that we have those regulations that civic platforms wanting to lead the discussion, pushes a certain way, and the hosts and the neighbors started to realize that they had similar interests in protecting our community from outsiders.
Justin, any?
Yeah, so early on, and throughout, there's been a healthy tension. We have a very strong vacation network in Palm Springs. It's very active. And they let us know anytime we've done something that they don't think that and sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. But when you look at that agency website, what's up front is not we're here to stick up for rights. What's up front is we're here to promote responsible vacation ownership and activity. And that's reflective of the partnership. They understand that what they gave in Palm Springs is the best of both worlds. And in other places, they have to pay, or they have to be even stricter. And so that's really opened the door to continue that dialogue. The tension's good, that helps us find the middle, right? We know exactly where people are on the opposite side. The dialogue is good, we're on a personal basis. We don't have anything quite as regular as the committee structure ever. But we do have constant communication with well-integrated which we've got the meetings with hotel leaders and others. And so it's really collaboration at its best, but coming at it from different initial positions, it's reconciling, collaborating, all those things we expect from the
Thank you. And I think you've shown with data how some of these regulations have benefited the community, but could you briefly describe how you believe, from your perspectives as professionals and listening to all the stakeholders, the changes that you've been able to make in communities with this focused regulation, how's that impacted your respective communities?
I think ultimately, and perhaps unfortunately, you do need to have consequences if people don't follow the rules. You need to have a clear rule, right? It can't be too vague. It can't be an aspiration. We might do all the best you can, right? When the health department comes into the restaurant, the whole needs to be a certain low service, not unapproximate, not keep it relatively cool. Like it's specific, and there has to be consequences for those that don't act properly. And again, what we see throughout industry with a level like this is the ones that can't do that. They have not an administrative, and that opens up the market opportunity for someone to go with that. So that's what we've seen. It's not just wearing some of these orders down. Let's say that they have to follow the rules. It's for the ones that outright use it, want to come along, they leave in a better one. Somebody who is going to be responsible, who buys into the motto of their representative stakeholder group that's not responsible, is not collaboration. And so I think that's been the most important thing, because there's a consequence, and it's pretty strict. I don't think a lot of communities do what all strict did. If you're caught not registering, you're paying for it. It doesn't get much stricter than that. It's citations, the behavior of your guests. In a 12-month period, you're suspended for 2 years. But what it does is puts the onus on that they are now ownership. They take an ownership position in that activity. And believe they're good at it. They know how to warn their guests. They know how to put those rules up front. They know how to intervene right away when something urgent that could lead to citation, because they have a vested interest. So all those component pieces are important. Work together. Unfortunately, for most of us, we need a few of those rules to kind of keep us in the way. The good news is that we apply them quickly and evenly. You might know the question.
First of all, there's very little review of the applications. We want everyone to get into the whole. We want it to be easy, they get online, they get meetings, they can submit here, and that's it. And then as we start to see more problems, you I would say higher level will exchange our community is important, and that it has a potential. Right? The study that found short-term rentals, 4 years after licensure did not have on stuff or huge a lot of things to do with it. There's scarce market. You win for the short-term regulation. That was the thing that people hear from straight. course, that would be good expect commercial use. Lots of very markets. So, to me, the fact that those things haven't come to fruition never leads them to good job.
Thank you. So that's really helpful information, impactful. And what a common theme I heard is that having consequences that you're able to tailor to the situation without fear of violating state law is really important. I know here we have Pumpkin Day, Halloween coming up, and Airbnb has touted that it's putting certain restrictions on rental during Halloween. And we here, I breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, but obviously that aspirational component or relying on industry, I think I've heard isn't enough in your communities, at least, and probably elsewhere. So I'm going to expose myself as a semi-retired litigator and ask a little bit of a leading question, but it's based on what you said already. And just to make the point clear to those who are less familiar with Arizona's environment versus other states, and Justin, I know you have specific experience in Erica. You're a very obviously quick study, very bright person, and great background for this. But as you know, we have preemption at the state level that, among other things, as Mr. Ponder explained, Nick, prevents us from treating short-term rentals, commercial, transient type use differently from homes. And so the question would be, do you think you could have found solutions in the manner that you did and as effective as you did, operating under that environment of possibly violating a state law to affect the will of your communities?
So those tools became new. And I wouldn't want to make it sound as though it was only about regulation. Palm Springs also had an interest in preserving the economic sector, of course. There may be a time, even within it, things change. Right? So Palm Springs might be very different. This is 2% of residential housing versus when it's 10%. And this is true of all of us, right? We change zoning, we change traffic laws as things change. Because that's kind of the job, right? There isn't really one size. So that's been a critical component. Without that, having one things tied completely, you just can't do that at all. I mean, I hate to say it, what would any of us do if we learned tomorrow that police were unable to speak? And some of us would just start speaking a little more, right? It becomes pretty crucial to have those tools, or you get what you get, and then you have no control. All you got instead was, somebody waiting to do things. Let's slow down. Some of us, we just ignore that and do what we want to do. And there would be radical as there are, I think, in the future. What I've seen personally, living in one of those communities, was frustration. Getting up at 3 in the morning to go ask the party next door to be quiet, and not having faith that I could call somebody, not because they were the same. Very much to do. I understand that there are some limited rules of party housing, but the whole suite of these tools that is addressing the issues. It is addressing the trash. It is not a residential. Differently, just like we would say in larger town.
Yeah, it goes back for me to the original question that city council was asking, do we manage or do we regulate? We didn't even ask, should we just let them do whatever they're doing and see how it goes? Rather than, it seems like it's the option here, right? You're not allowed to regulate this preemption. And that just wasn't an option for us. I mean, we were going to have problems, and we were going to have more problems if we didn't enact some law regulation, right? To get that right, but no, we want to have this opportunity. We want to, there's a market here for this. There are people who want to be in an entrepreneurial spirit, or they, need the extra income, and we want to, and we want to do that. We want to help them and encourage them to do it the right way. But if we don't regulate at all, there is no right way. And so then what that does is it puts the good actors, the good, people who want to run a proper business and follow rules and follow all these old standards. It puts them competing with folks who just want to skirt around and cut corners. And if that ends up hurting not just your community, but those businesses who want to do it right. interesting to me because in Colorado, local controls here is sacrosanct. It is, you don't mess with local control, even if the state says this is a matter of statewide concern in a piece of legislation. The courts have found that that's not necessarily true. You know, saying it doesn't make it so. It can still be, you know, makes concern. To contrast that, I'm originally from West Virginia, very different landscape than Colorado, but it's the same concept. Home rule there, local government is by nature the best person to deal with these specific problems or specific risks or opportunities that you see in your community. Denver has much different risks and opportunities than the communities in our mountain towns, Vail, Frisco, Breckenridge, right? Those have a totally different system for regulating short-term rentals because they're totally different towns with totally different needs, and the residents have different impressions for what is cool and what is not, and what is welcome and what is feasible. So, to circle back to your question, we would have been able to do what we did, and without that, that's
Thank you. So one wrap-up question, and love to take any questions from the audience if we can. Both of you have talked about consequences and you know, I guess a carrot and stick approach, if you will, which is very similar to what we do as elected officials in other arenas, and in Arizona has been cut off to a degree, to a large degree in this area. But one thing that I've heard at the legislature, and I know many of us have heard, is that if given that stick, local communities are given the stick of eliminating short-term rentals or putting restrictions on short-term rentals, that they'll absolutely use it and kill the industry. I'm hearing that's not your experience, that's not what's happened in your communities. Any thoughts on that, takeaways about, you know, how did that work? I have some ideas, but I've heard glimpses of it, that there's a dialogue, but can you just put a little more light on that so that we understand and we can take that information back to our representatives?
First of all, we know that construction law are ways, and a state or federal government can establish limits, right? Say things like, well, we don't think you should be allowed to add between, you know, and regular. So I think that's really the trick. It's just great feedback in local government called election, and it happens all the time on a regular cycle. And so if the community wants something that the local elections want to deliver, we know that. What's interesting is sometimes kind of malaligned at a large level. You might have two different communities. One is 70 in favor of something, one is 30-70 opposed. With local elections and local control, you can do both, which is by simple math, more representative of the voices of those people. Take either one of those, put it on the other, wouldn't really make sense, right? So number one, I think there is evidence that you can do things like regulating in a really radical way, private industry. But number two, at the local level, elected officials know you don't survive very long doing things that your community doesn't want to do, and there are voices for this stuff. There are the widows who wants to sell or rent a room so that she can stay in the homes. There are some real reasons to remove some of this activity, and local government, local level, unelected in 2 or 4 years, perfect place to have it.
That's right. I mean, there's a demand for home care. There's a demand for this service. The market is not going to disappear just because cities and towns will be allowed to regulate, right? We've heard, you know, we've heard that from the industry, right? Oh, well, do you enact this law or that law? And we just want to operate right. Well, then another company will. You know, people, short-term rentals are here to stay. People want to rent out their homes. They like the income, they have need people, they have lifestyles, they want digital nomads. None of that's changing. So the fact that sometimes, you know, potentially could ban them and just instead, you know, elected officials are not in the business of doing something that's super unpopular, but some, you know, candy as well. So we've not seen any of those fruition, you know, like, oh, we did this, everything was terrible. We just haven't seen that. begin to see hosts become more professional, they become more invested in their communities. They are hosting good neighbor summits and organizing amongst themselves. And it's really cool to see how fast are coming together and saying, okay, how can we do this right and well within the bounds of the law and still make it fun and successful, which is why I got into it in the first place. So,
Right. Is there an appetite from the audience for questions? Yes, a lot.
Yeah, just maybe an observation and a question to Justin, because you mentioned that there's 7 full-time FTEs that are dedicated to managing short-term rentals. A rhetorical question to the group: how many cities and towns have 7 FTEs dedicated to short-term rentals? So I think what's happened here in Arizona is that there's been a disproportionate burden put on the cities and towns with cities. And I think what you did is turn that upside down and manage that front. So were you able to fund that through registration? And like, what are your registration fees? Because it's just kind of light bulb went off. We said 7 FTEs, and that's a pretty big people that are managed.
Yeah, so for those that didn't hear the question was how do we administer a 7 FTE program? You gave the answer right, which is that we collect that in the registration fee. They're approximately $4,000 annually. Cities also collected over the last few years about $2 million in funds. So the nice thing is, the rest of the community is burdened with those expenses, built into the program, and it's evaluated annually. And the proposal recently to increase that substantially to be more proactive inspection and in working with the stakeholders. We actually heard a little bit. Said, we're not going to go forward with that radical increase and expand the staff to do more preemptive inspections and things, because we feel like we've achieved a good balance of community satisfaction. So it's paid for by people who benefit. It's expensive. We are a tourist community in Palm Springs, but the main one, I mean, again, they're grow. They build that into the product, just like a whole town has to do with the service system and the person at the counter, et cetera. So we use there and there. We'll play field, which is pretty essential for ensuring that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Quick question. You said that you were limited to one owner, one property. Do you see people getting around it by setting separate LLCs in place with the single owners? And do you see it capping out anywhere, even though it goes up and down? But you haven't tried to cap the number, I don't think, with your regulations. So do you see it sort of approaching some number that it may kind of top out at? Or do you think, what are you doing to prevent it from becoming a greater portion of your city where 80% is STRs?
Good questions. So constantly checking it, because that tool's in the toolbox, the ability to cap the number, that's always good. And so the city's paying attention and looking at those trends, similar to Sonoma, Palm Springs with respect to growth of 10%. The 2010 to 2020, and it grew by 23, despite substantial additions to the right? That's part of the STR. So because two of the toolbox, we did say, okay, it's 6% the right number, 7% the right number, 10% the right number, and tailor it that way. Make sure we get the
I just wondered if the LLC, if there were data around it.
No, so the regulations are relevant, and so if you decide to gain the system, we're happy to go through the process and and all those things. But ultimately, we've been successful, especially with those that literally transfer the rules, and they've been suspended that there are pretty significant escalating things. And we don't do that.
In Denver, we don't issue federal licenses to person who's the primary resident of the property. So the LLC doesn't do it as a person. So one thing we did early on is
you regulate them, they limit them to prevention of the house. Because if we have that, we'll be in a hard time for it to take course on the other spouse.
So not all of them are as easy to implement, and that's certainly one that we're. Some of it become that, reward, desired outcome, reward of one, right? There's someone at some point, would somebody sneak in an extra person? Sure. But if there's evidence of that, there's noise, there's additional vehicles, we have a few different ways we could get that. To be honest, if there were 10 people and not 8, and there's peace in the neighborhood, we may never know. So there's another incentive for people to do the right thing. But if we need to, the nice part about having the beneficiaries of this enterprise, the owners, pay for the enforcement, is that we have that short-term rental for 5,000. So if they need to go and monitor, investigate, park a unsuspecting car off the road and count people, believe me, we all know that's not the end, right? So let's just say well, we have a gas well, where are they? Where's everybody going? We can intervene at some point and that kind of evidence, because we have to keep that just to do that.
So I'll come over here. Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions. How do you guys denote the difference between a person who owns 2 properties? This is their primary, this is their Airbnb. How do you determine which property is their primary property?
So in general, we've one of the updates we made last year was to the definition of primary residence, right? And so there's a code section that it's linked to the slide at the end. It says it has a list of factors that the department can consider while investigating our application to determine whether it's primary residence. Things like very registered over vehicles, registered, pay taxes. Any other properties you own, right? And some of that is very fact specific. So we have 2 police, we want a police inspector, investigator, records of things. So for example, we have a home in Atlanta and we want a car registered in Atlanta and we're registered to vote in Atlanta. You send your kids to school in Atlanta. Your LinkedIn says that you're the president of a company in Atlanta. But you're trying to get a short-term rental license for your primary residence in Denver. We're probably going to ask you to submit additional paperwork to, basically say, are you sure this is your primary residence? So we use an affidavit of primary residence that we sent to them, basically saying, are you willing to swear to perjury? This is where you live, and not this other place. Some folks say, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that, and they go through their application. Some really take it all away, and we deny them, and then they request a denial hearing.
So if I have 2 properties that satisfy those criteria, and I selected this as the primary, if this residential property receives a suspension or ban within a week, can I just switch? Does that fall?
We have one primary residence.
Right, but can I refile and say, no, this is my primary, and now I switch my Airbnb? Can that happen? Does that make sense?
You are licensed at one location.
Right.
Your primary residence, you would have to surrender that license before you can grant a license.
Right, but a person could just move all their stuff out of one place, move their stuff into another, say, no, this is my now, this is my Airbnb now. I just didn't know if that was, if the ban follows the owner who owns the properties, or does the ban follow the property?
So Congress did not have a primary residency requirement. There is a requirement that only allow to hold one permit. So there too, somebody can surrender a permit to the property and then move to another, but a ban would apply to the owner. So the owner makes all the rules. The owner doesn't just go get by a different property and start.
I'm curious, a lot of the good actors say that decibel meters with automatic text messages to the owner and secondary messages if the noise doesn't go away after a certain time I'm sorry, the first one goes to the occupant, and then after 30 minutes, if it's not abated, the owner has to send somebody there. But neither of you mentioned that. Is there a reason why you didn't go down that road?
So for Palm Springs, the incentive is kind of built in. You have 3 citations to be suspended. Frankly, at that point, don't really care what the mechanism is. So if somebody wants to do something different, maybe the person managing the unit lives close by, or can drive by numerous times. Sure sounds like something like that would be more convenient. I think it is well used, and stakeholders promote that kind of technology. But at the end of the day, the means to the end is the responsibility and discretion of the owner. What we created is a very powerful incentive. You get 3 strikes and then you're out. So if you've got 1 or 2, you sure better be very motivated. These are the things that make being motivated easy and acceptable, right? There's a way to do it. But if they want to get out in a whole different way, no problem for the city as long as they get out.
Just as an aside, like when the slide presentation started, I was getting really optimistic that, man, we can do this. But then I discovered that municipality of 47,000 people, have 7 key code enforcers dedicated to just their short-term rentals. It's like our average municipality of 47,000 probably has 2 code enforcers, and they're doing all code enforcement.
Just remember, paid for by new revenue generated from the activity. So that's on scale. So for a community that maybe has a little activity, you might only need a fragment portion of an activity. For us, because it was important to tell our residents that we'll have people dedicated to this initiative alone. Right? There was a big effort because we had to be responsible to our local residents to prove that we were fairly bulletproof in the approach. So that was one of the things that the city offered. That resulted in a 70%, applicability and necessity go forward with the regulations, but cost to citizens, nothing.
And you have a 24/7 response with these 7 people?
No, so the code team generally goes into the late hours of the evening or early morning, midnight, 1 o'clock or something like that. After that would be a police response, but somebody had known earlier about how that burden was likely reduced by creating the scheme, and it has. So our calls that are responded to by police officers, which is paid for by that, is down 90%. And instead handled by these code officers that are paid for 100% by the owners making the property response.
We'll do one last question, and then I think we need to wrap up. Got someone over here who's very excited to ask a question.
I just wanted to follow up a few questions about the staff. Right now, we have a company, a third-party provider. I'll take care of all of that. All. Did you evaluate any of that third-party?
So I have experience in those systems. The city's know that it's continues today, there's a third-party contract for a 24-hour hotline, and they're willing to handle some of the citation process after you're something with the site, right? That turns out to be a service to know that they use very often because they're working at 8 citation of the issue. Now, on spring, it's all in-house. So it's a 24-hour hotline, but it's just about communications. All the investigations, all the citations, everything else is handled in-house. What's nice about that is, again, you really get a label, right? You know some of these people, there are, believe it or not, neighbors who are just so disappointed about short-term rentals that they'll make complaints that don't result in citations. You get to know exactly who's who in that system, having people on the ground. The hotline is helpful, but number one, you have to have rules that you're able to implement. And number two, they're never going to have that level of service. So again, that's paid for by the office of the owners and networks involved.
Whenever we use compliance software, we used to do total compliance, now we do network. But at least for monitoring, we also do that. And it does a little bit more of that. Strangers that are saying you don't have to full-time employees in the benefit show them. And also you can show them part of your job. Software, so it's a little bit more of a team effort.
Thank you. Well, this has been a tremendous panel. I want to thank our 3 excellent speakers. Roxana, Joe Primack to help contact the speakers. We started talking about dreams and realities. We've seen the realities. that exist in other places. I know the town and many of us look forward to working together to keep making their realities or a possibility of having their realities or the reality that fits our communities in our communities, just like we do with other matters. So with that, I just wanted to thank you all again. Thank the league for doing this. And remember, if the moderator wasn't that good, it wasn't me, it was my doppelganger.